Thank you so much, Mindy, and thank you everyone at Tufts who did so much of the work in putting this conference together. Deborah and Adam and Mindy and Laura and so many others. Thank you to the board of MIEN also and so many other volunteers. And thank you all for being here, for kind of creating this community that we have over the next few days. So it's my pleasure to introduce Jessica Morey, our keynote speaker tonight. Jessica is probably most widely known as the executive director of IBME, Inward Bound Mindfulness Education, which teaches adolescents mindfulness and takes them on retreats. Jessica has been practicing mindfulness and attending retreats since she was 14 years old, inspired by the meditation retreats at the Insight Meditation Society. She's practiced retreats here in the States. She's traveled to Asia, where she practiced and deepened her practice as a young woman. She's a founding board member of IBME and the lead teacher. I think part of the reason IBME also works is, if I'm not mistaken, she's trained as an engineer. Is that right? Yes. So it takes a lot of work to run an organization like that. She's published on contemplative practice. She's published on environmental sustainability. And for those of us who shop at Whole Foods, we've also seen her published on the cover of Mindful magazine when we were checking out our groceries this last year. I'm proud, but also, as many of us are, grateful to call Jessica a colleague, to call her a friend, and also to call her a mentor, a teacher, a role model for so many of us, as someone who teaches us all about mindfulness, about compassion, about creativity, and really a lot about integrity as well. IBME, if you don't know it, and I'm sure you'll hear a bit about it tonight and throughout the weekend, is an organization that's really planted the seeds of mindfulness in probably thousands of young people, I would imagine, creating actually like what I think of as like a whole new generation of practitioners and probably a whole new generation of teachers as well. I was kind of thinking, I brought my 2-year-old to the dinner tonight and introduced him to Jessica and introduced Jessica to him, and thinking, in 12 years, you're probably going to be on retreat with him. And like, that's just so cool. And I feel so grateful for that organizations like IBME exist out there. And so IBME has changed the lives of thousands of young people and the people in their lives. It's also, if anyone's ever had the opportunity to work as a volunteer, as an adult on an IBME retreat, I think that's probably equally life-changing as it is for the kids. And if you haven't volunteered for an IBME retreat, you're probably always looking for volunteers. And I encourage you to experience a really life-changing experience, even as an adult. So IBME has really expanded also in so many ways, and now is training teachers in their IBME methodology. But lastly, I'm just honored to be here and honored to be listening to Jessica speak, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Great. Thank you so much. That was such a touching introduction. I really appreciate it. Yeah, there actually are a lot. Who has been a volunteer on a teen retreat in the room? Yeah, so there are a number of people here who have staffed our teen retreats. So you can ask them also a little bit about the program. And so Chris gave a little bit of my background. This is a picture from our Northeast teen retreat from a few years ago. So you can see in this retreat we had about 40 teens, and then we have a really high staff to teen ratio. Most of them are volunteers. And actually, we usually have way more people that want to staff and volunteer than we have space for. But if you apply, we'll definitely consider you, because it is a really, really powerful experience. And yeah, just to say, so I went on teen retreats 24 years ago. I started practicing meditation, and it was a big part of my life. I went on to go to study engineering and worked in climate change and climate policy in DC. And at that time, the teen retreats were kind of brought from the Insight Meditation Society to California and then Virginia. So I started volunteering. And in 2010, we became clear that we wanted to start an organization to expand and grow and support the teen retreats more effectively. So that's when my brilliant co-founder, Joe Klein, came up with the name, Inward Bound Mindfulness Education, IBME. And so we made the nonprofit, and it's been rocking since then. The time I thought I was just going to be a board member, I had my whole career going along, DC. And we hired an ED, and within 2 months of his starting, he fell really ill and actually had to have a heart transplant. Jesse Torrance, who folks might know, who's now doing really well, married, had a baby a year and a half ago. But it was a really touch and go period. There were about 8 months when he was in a coma on an ECMO machine. And so during that time, we were a young guy out of nowhere. And what are we going to do? Are we going to keep the organization functioning? So we're taking on more responsibility. And at some point, my co-founder Joe was like, well, why don't you just quit your job and take over as ED? And I was like, because I have student loans and health insurance. And but a series of events happened. It was a little bit like the heavenly messengers in the Buddha story, which is that basically another one of my friends got cancer. I met my now husband, who was just recovering from stage 4 lymphoma. He's also here, over there, doing well. So it just had this realization. It was like, whenever I was on teen retreat, there was not a moment when I thought to myself, like, there's something else I should be doing. Just every single moment was like, this is the most valuable way I can spend my time. And I definitely could not say that about my work. Even though it kind of looked like important work in climate change and clean energy, it didn't feel that way. I was wondering what's really the impact I'm having every day with all this effort. So I did. I ended up quitting my job and taking over. I thought it was going to be just like for a year or two, kind of get it all set up. But here we are 6 years later, or 7. So that's my story. I think the other thing is I'm going to talk tonight a little bit about social justice, or maybe a lot, as a part of the focus. And just that's been a thread in the organization since the beginning. So the teen retreats were originally held in an organization called the Buddhist Peace Fellowship, which is a socially engaged organization. They have a lot of focus on social justice in California. And then they were held in a community nonprofit that's based in Virginia, which has a huge focus on equity and justice in the community in Virginia. And so when we created a secular nonprofit, it was sort of already woven into the genetics of the organization. So what I want to talk about tonight is the role of cultivating compassion, both for self and other, and basically mediated through compassion, how mindfulness education can have the promise of mindfulness education, how it can have a much bigger impact beyond stress reduction, beyond performance improvement, which are wonderful, wonderful things. But the possibility of mindfulness education is so much beyond that. And I'm sorry that Mickey, who introduced Mickey? Mindy. That Mindy couldn't stay because she was basically touching on exactly the kinds of things that I want to talk about and that impassion me about the work that we're doing. The role of mindfulness in activism, the role in mindfulness in supporting young people's mental health and well-being so that they can thrive and live out their life passions and values. To me, that's what it's about. When I look at mindfulness, it's about discovering who am I, what do I value, and what do I want to do in the world, and how do I get there. I have this thing. Great. So what I wanted to do is just before, as we start here, do a little reflection together. So kind of like a guided meditation. And we'll mix throughout the evening practice and talking. So, which is very much like teen retreat. We'll go in and out of it. So yeah, you can just get into a comfortable enough position. And maybe just take a few deeper breaths. And as you take some breaths, just noticing, how is your body tonight? How is your mind? And we can use our breath to bring a little bit of balance. So if you're feeling tired, you can take in a little bit deeper inhale. If you're feeling restless or agitated in any way, you can extend your exhale. And getting a sense of the weight of your body, so you can feel the contact of your body with the chair, the floor. You can feel the soles of your feet on the ground. And then even for a moment you might imagine the sense of beneath us, the floor supported by the foundation of this building, and then the earth, embedded in the earth beneath us. And just feeling if connecting down with the sense of the earth beneath you brings a sense of grounding. Inviting some softening and relaxation into your body. You can soften your eyes. Just soften the muscles behind your eyes. You can relax your jaw, throat. Soften your shoulders, your belly, hips. And relaxing your hands. So we soften and relax our bodies as a soft landing place for our attention, for our awareness. And then into this felt sense of your body, into your heart center. You might take some breaths into the heart, to the chest. And just dropping in the question, what is my intention for being here? For coming to this conference this weekend? We just drop the question in and let it, it's almost like it sinks like a pebble in a well. So not needing to come up with an answer. Dropping it in and seeing if anything arises. And what is my intention for my work? What is my greatest hope for my work? Just seeing as you drop the question in, what are the layers? Sometimes beneath the first answer, deeper still, what is my intention for my work? What is my greatest wish? And what is the greatest wish for my practice? For this mindfulness practice that I engage in, what is my intention, my motivation? What is my greatest intention, deeper still? And then as you're ready, you can open your eyes if they're closed. So what I want to talk about is I want to make the link between the basic practices of mindfulness, of paying attention, of coming to the present moment, of being connected with our bodies, to some of the greatest challenges that we're facing today as a society. So the first one is the mental health crisis, which is connected to the addiction epidemic that we're experiencing, particularly in this area, I think, well, all over the country, but definitely in Massachusetts. Systemic injustice that is finally coming into the consciousness of more Americans, particularly those in positions of privilege, are starting to actually see, feel, connect with this reality of how our country was created. And it's not just our country, but the ways this is true around the world. And then the final one is climate change. So just a few things to cover tonight. We'll see where we get. Yeah. So I think on the climate change side, I'll talk about it a little more, I kind of just started ignoring it. I think part of why I left that work was I felt so depressed about it. And so it's been an interesting process for me to think about, why did I do that, and like, what's next? How do these come together for me, given the new science that keeps coming out about the severity of climate change? So we'll begin. This is my current definition I'm kind of playing with for mindfulness. And so it expands on John Kabat-Zinn's, the most popular, kind of famous definition of paying attention to the present moment with kindness and curiosity. I like to include into this the quality of knowing, that it's not just a bare attention, but that actually there's an intelligence, a metacognitive awareness, and knowing that is part of mindfulness. So, and it also includes, I think of mindfulness including a whole series of skills and qualities that are both embedded in it and cultivated by it, right? So relaxation and calm, the ability to focus and sustain attention through concentration, curiosity and investigation of what's happening, kindness and trust. So there's a way that to really be present, to connect with experience, we have to trust. There has to be a way that we trust the moment enough to connect. Acceptance and equanimity. So again, those are the quality of just letting things, it's almost like surrendering to the fact that things are the way they are, you know? It's just, sometimes I find that funny in my own mind, that something's happening and some part of me is like trying to deny that, right? Or resist it. And when you finally see that, you're like, well, I'm resisting what is already happening. So I might as well just like admit it's happening and get curious, right? There's a total ridiculousness to the mind in those moments. And then all of that together can lead to insight and wisdom about our own minds and hearts, and then other people's minds and hearts in the world around us. Right? So that's how I think about mindfulness. But I also think it's really important to know that to admit that mindfulness by itself is not a panacea. So despite the hype right now around meditation and mindfulness, it doesn't fix everything in your life. And very specifically, there's other skills, practices, and tools that we need to have for mindfulness to reach its full potential. It's I think of it actually as the ground. So I have these two metaphors that I've been playing with recently about what is mindfulness. So the first one is mindfulness as Mac cleaner. Clean my Mac. So it says keep your Mac clean and healthy. So in this metaphor, your mind, heart is the computer, is the Mac. And then the mindfulness is the Clean My Mac program. And so it comes in, it cleans up old patterns, old habits, old conditioning. It kind of improves the functioning and efficiency and effectiveness of the system so that then you can use your software more effectively and you don't get the pinwheel of death, You know that? Whenever I start getting the pinwheel of death, it's like, oh, it's time to clean my Mac. So that, because then you can't do anything. You can't do your word processing. You can't get on Chrome because the system's overloaded, right?
You're doing that.
You have to clean your Mac. And defrag or frag or something. And I mean, it does. It goes through and cleans out old files that you don't use and all that kind of stuff. So I think of mindfulness as that. But so it makes a system that's healthy and effective and available, but it doesn't word process. You need a word processor to word process on it. Okay. And then maybe a little bit more natural metaphor is mindfulness as enrichment for the soil. So here, our minds and hearts are the soil. That's the underlying ground. And then the mindfulness practice is like tilling and enriching and strengthening the soil. So it's this fertile, fecund soil into which we can plant other kinds of seeds. And so seeds of compassion, seeds of relationship skills, of communication skills, of deeper understanding about the way things are, history, facts, information. And so in many ways, this is also the link, for me, I think about this as a link with social emotional learning, that mindfulness can create this open, responsive, receptive mind. And then we use the social emotional learning, to me, is totally critical to get the pro-social benefits that we want. But those don't just automatically grow out of mindfulness, I'm going to suggest. And maybe I'll just give an example from my life. So I've meditated a lot. I've done many multi-month retreats in silence, practiced in Asia, a strong daily practice, 2.5 decades now, almost, of solid practice. And as you heard, I started running a nonprofit. It started growing, so then I have staff. There's now 5 or 6 staff. And the way that I show up, or have shown up with my staff, is definitely not how one would hope a long-time meditator, or whatever our projections of that is, right? So impatient, angry sometimes, demanding, like frustrated. And I would watch that. I mean, I do have enough mindfulness to notice what I'm feeling and thinking, to see the reaction to the other person and an empathetic connection and see that this is like not good. But basically, it's like, felt like I was just watching a train crash into a brick wall and just helplessly like watching the process. So, and I don't tend to necessarily like yell, but the message comes across, right? And so it was really frustrating for me. It was so painful. Like I was like, I want to quit. I want to quit this job because I can't do it in a way that feels kind and compassionate and mindful in the way that I want to show up. Just the level of stress, the busyness that we had, I wasn't able to figure. And then also just managing people, like working with humans. It's so hard, right? What's been amazing is I hired this amazing coach. She's from California, so it's mostly Skype, from the nonviolent communication community. And she's actually working with the organization to develop a more shared leadership and collaborative power, distributed power structure within the organization. And then also coaching me personally around how to manage and effectively. And it's amazing. So we'll have these meetings and I'll describe like my totally frustrating situation with someone. And she gives me these specific skills and practices, first a view, an understanding, and then like a particular skill to use or practice. And then I have the meeting with the person, I do it, and it's like magic. It really, so usually it's worked well. Sometimes I have to go back and be like, that didn't work. But it just really transforms the relationship. It's totally shifting. And so I need her. I need that skill set around nonviolent communication and what she's pointing out to me to be able to actually live and enact in my work the way that I want to be the kind of leader and boss that I want to be. So just going home and meditating for 2 hours was not cutting it, basically. And then on the other side, so then there's part of me that feels a little like depressed, like, wow, I've meditated all this time and I still am a jerk, at work sometimes. And but what's been really heartening is her reflection back to me about working with me and working with our organization. She's like, I love this. And she's quite senior in her work. She's like, I love working with your organization. It's so responsive. Like, I meet with people, I give you, ideas and practices, and you put it to work right away. She's like, it's almost like instant gratification working with you. And then she's like, I kind of want to write about our work together because it's sort of like the perfect case example of how to do this. And so what that meant to me was like, we're all meditators. Everyone in our organization is a practitioner. And so that we have, like, doing this practice, we have our minds are open, responsive, flexible, receptive, so that getting that information, if she points something out, like, do you notice how you're doing this? It's like, okay, yeah, yep, that's what's happening. I'm doing that. And you could do this other thing. Oh, okay, I'll try that other thing. And then we do it. But to me, that feels like what one does, but she's saying that that's unusual for that kind of change to happen so quickly with people. So that was heartening for me. There's some benefit to all this practice. But so that is kind of the framework of what I want to talk about here. So what are some of the other things that we want to solve some of these issues that we're facing? What are some of those other tools and skills that we need to be thinking about and adding to our work with mindfulness education? And so this is Tanya Singer, who is a researcher out of Germany, one of the Max Planck Institutes. Totally amazing. If you have the opportunity to hear Tanya Singer speak, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. This study that she's done is probably the best and most comprehensive study on meditation in the world. It's a 3 to 4, it's been started in 2013, a multi-year study. She's working with 4 groups of people. Each group has 80 people in it. 3 active groups and 1 control. Each one working for 9 months, doing practices for 9 months, and then there was multi-year follow-up. She's doing brain scans, blood tests for hormones, behavioral studies, like, stress, social stress studies, self-report questionnaires, like the whole gamut. So actually, she's got so much data. If you're a young researcher, you could go work with her. She's always looking for people to go through the data. And so what she did is she taught people different kinds of practice and then looked at what are the different results in terms of the brain, physiologically, behavioral, from the different kinds of practice. So the first 2 cohorts did 3 months of what she called presence practice, which is breath awareness and body scan. So it's just that they just did that every day. It was a real commitment. And then the next practice, the red that you see there, is what you call the affect model, which is loving-kindness practice, and then some relational dyads. And so we're going to do some of those tonight. The green is something called perspective, the perspective module, which is a little bit more complicated and less familiar to me in terms of the sort of traditional meditation, but it's like where you understand the parts of your own mind and then start to understand someone else's parts and how those parts are acting. So it's basically a perspective taking and theory of mind practice. And then the third group did just the loving kindness. And so what she found with just doing the breath and body work was people's reported sense of stress, their well-being, their life satisfaction improved and increased. Their attention improved dramatically, but there were no pro-social benefits to it in the sense of no reduced social stress, no increased altruism, those kinds of measures. But one thing I do want to name is that it wasn't like MBSR. They were very strict about the way they taught it. It was just, often when we teach, come back to the breath, there's like a kindness. Come back with kindness, acceptance. They were very particular. They did not do that. Just come back. So, because when we teach that way, we're actually including kindness and love right into the breath meditation. But so then the module that they did just loving kindness and dyads, there were huge pro-social benefits. So the way it worked is that you had people every single day for 10 minutes would do a dyad by phone, and you were assigned a different person every week for 12 weeks, randomly assigned. And at the end of that, people's sense of compassion, connection, and like openness to all people increased dramatically. So not just to the people this whole concept of in-group, out-group, because there's enough diversity in the group and they had to work with enough different people, they had that experience of the common humanity of people. And so that spread quite widely. And so other kinds of social stress went way down. They do this like one of those things where they like fake you out and freak you out and then test you. And so for them, for the people who did affect, way less social stress, just kind of ease and awkward social situations. But their attention was equal. They went up in attention the same amount as the people who did breath and body. So, because when you think about it, when you're doing the kindness meditation, you're still coming back. You're bringing the attention back to the object. So she concluded, I was just with her last week, and she said, if you only had 3 months, I would say do loving kindness and dyads. That gives you, it's your best bang for your buck in 3 months. So the one caveat I need to say is she is an empathy and compassion researcher, so there might be a bias there. And also to say that the particular practice, as I said, the mindfulness was not what we often teach as mindfulness. But I also think there's something to this, to that piece being really central to what we do and a really important part of what we do. And I know there's going to be a workshop with Fiona and Calmer Choice and Adria, and I think to go to that for us. So I think as a group, we need to be thinking about how can we do these compassion practices in schools, public schools in particular, in a way that is going to be acceptable. But I don't think we should just not do them. We just need to figure out how we do them in a way that won't be threatening for people. So it's my little public service announcement. But what I wanted to do is to do one of these practices, okay? A dyad. So I'm going to invite you to find someone next to you, find a partner, one person. And then even as you do this, I invite you to just notice what that's like for you. As we begin this, I feel it's really important just to notice how does it feel for you, even this. Okay, we're going to do a dyad, we're going to talk to someone else. Just what does that feel like for you? And when I say feel like, what do you notice in your body? How does it feel to begin this process? And what are your thoughts? Are you like, cool, I like talking to people, or oh my God, I hate this, I can't, I freaking hate it when people make you do this. So we're just noticing how that feels, and it's totally great. And one thing I will say is in this research that Tanya did, this practice, the dyads, were what people least wanted to do. So they had the most kind of reluctance or anxiety about it, but she says, they're German, so they just follow rules. So they just did it. But actually, it ended up being their favorite practice by the end. So, it was interesting. Took them a while, but they got really into it. So this isn't exactly what she does, but what we're going to do is a loving kindness dyad. So what I'll ask you to do is to think about someone in your life who you feel you love, that you love quite easily. You think about them and you feel, it's like that sense your heart sort of smiles. And this might be someone who's been really kind and generous to you, or that you care for, that you really love. And it could also be a pet, if that's your easiest connection. Or it could be a place. There's a place that you go and you just feel a sense of ease and well-being. Yeah. Okay. So get an image of that being in your mind. And then we're going to turn to our partner. And just to tap your partner maybe on the hand or somewhere. Okay. And so whoever tapped first, going going to be, the first tapper is going to be A, partner A. Second tapper is partner B. And so partner A will ask the question first. This is a repeating question. And the question is, so what do you love about them? So what do you love about them? The partner will answer. So partner B will answer, I love how generous they are. And then you say thank you. The questioner says thank you. So what do you love about them? They answer, thank you. So what do you love about them? Thank you. You just keep going, and then if you're the answer of partner B, just what comes to heart, to mind. And we'll do that for about 60 seconds, 60 to 90 seconds, and then we'll take a break and then switch. Okay, so partner A is asking, so what do you love about them? You can begin. Just notice what are you feeling, whether you're the listener or the speaker. How does it feel in your body? And another thing that we can just reflect on is, where was your attention when you were speaking or listening, when you were interacting? Where was the focus of your attention? And so one thing that we practice, and so in these relational mindfulness, is keeping some sense of the awareness in our own felt experience, our own body. So we'll switch to the other partner. And you might remember, and so there's some felt sense in your body. Sometimes I think about it as 50-50. So 50% connected to, attuned to your partner, 50% connected to and attuned to your own experience. And then when you get advanced, it's 100-100. You can do that another time. Okay. So we'll just switch partners. So again, just taking a kind of feeling moment and noticing how you feel in your own body, any emotions that are present and how you notice them. And then you can thank your partner in whatever way feels appropriate. Okay, great. This is great. Okay, so there's one more part of this practice that we'll do. So we'll do an actual loving kindness practice. And we'll start with our person that's easy, or the being that's easy for us to love. So again, you can get just comfortable, and especially with these kinds of practices, we like to be as comfortable as possible, so you're not kind of fighting discomfort in your body. Practice. So again, you can take a few breaths, and if it feels helpful to you, you might take some breaths into your heart center, to your chest, just to connect into this feeling center of our bodies. And then you can bring to mind this being that you've just been reflecting on and describing. You can have an image of them, a felt sense of them. And then offering your wish for them, for this being. Whatever it is that you wish for them to be happy, for them to be safe and healthy. You wish for them to experience joy or ease. So also just a sense of loving gratitude I love you. Thank you for being so kind to me. I love you. Thank you for being so kind. May you be happy. May you be safe. May you be healthy. You can just keep an image of them in your mind, a felt sense of them, and this wish that you have. It's very, very simple, natural wish in the heart for this being to be well. And so then you can let the image of this being go and bring to mind your partner's beloved, your partner's being. So, it might be hard for you to visually imagine them, but you've heard some of their descriptions. Just remembering some of the ways that your partner described this being, and then wishing them well. This being is a stranger to you, but is a beloved to your partner. May you be happy. May you be safe. May you experience ease in your life. May you experience joy. May you be happy. Thank you for being so kind. So again, it's just a very simple inclination that our hearts have, wanting this being to be happy. And then for a moment, turning your attention back towards yourself, your own body, heart, mind. Sometimes it can be difficult to wish ourselves well. You might think about how your beloved loves you, how they see you, what they wish for you. Sometimes that's one way that we can connect with our own goodness, our own wish to be happy. Just see if you can offer yourself the simple, friendly wish to be happy and at ease and safe, healthy. And for the last part of this, getting an image or a felt sense of your partner, the person that you are a dyad with, and wishing them well. Again, just this human who wants to be happy, struggles with the human condition, who has these good qualities and aspirations, who is loved by the people in their life. I'm wishing them just simply, I want you to be happy. I'd like for you to be safe and healthy. I'd like for you to experience joy and ease in your life. May you be at ease. And then just for the few moments, you can allow your attention to return to your own body, felt experience. We can reflect that as for some minute, maybe this other person was wishing you well, and they probably found it quite easy, quite simple, just to connect with the wish that you be happy. And you can take a moment to receive that wish. And then as you're ready, you can open your eyes. Come back. Okay. Thank you for that practice. So you notice in that practice we get a whole, if you're familiar with the loving kindness practice, we get the easy, the stranger, self. We really can connect into a wide array. Okay, so just name that. So this is hearing about Tanya's work, Tanya Singer, was it really inspiring for me. And there's a lot, and I'll talk a little bit more of her work, but a lot to learn and to reflect on in terms of my teaching and what we do. But also in many ways it was really validating of what we do on Teen Retreat, in that we always teach a heart practice every evening. There's a loving kindness. And for some youth who are struggling, we might encourage them to do more of that practice. We do the dyads in small groups, 2 hours a day. The young people are in small groups, and often that's their favorite part of the day. So that's, you can see two young people doing the dyads in the top. And we do other kinds of connecting with nature, workshops on gender, social justice, identity, mindful movement, creative expression activities, and then we try to have fun as much as possible. And so this is we often have a big dance party the last night. So that's a dance party happening. And it is fun. It's really fun. Okay, so we're going to shift into some of the ways this is applicable to these practices of compassion and relational practice are applicable to the mental health. We'll start with the mental health crisis. So I have a sense working with young people about the struggles that they're facing, but it's been shocking. So now I live at the Middlesex campus in a high school in a dorm, and so I'm having more interaction with youth professionals. So I do say, all I know about youth is like hanging out with them. As you know, I studied engineering, so I have a felt sense of what's happening for them. But to hear these youth professionals who are working with teens in high schools, and they're talking about the levels of stress that they're experiencing, and especially counselors and the number of kids that are getting hospitalized for serious mental illness, coming back to the school, working with some pretty severe challenges. And I think there's a lot of reasons why that's happening today. But the statistics, then I did some research preparing for this and also our teacher training, and it was pretty shocking to me. So 44% of American college students report having symptoms of depression. In the U.S., suicide is the third leading cause of death in young people between 15 and 24. And that rate has tripled since 1960. And then they've seen a sharp increase then even since 2007. And so there's, periodically there's different articles. Like maybe 2 years ago, there was an article in the New York Times about the suicide rates particularly on these prestigious campuses, college campuses. So it's happening all over. There's not a particular class or group or population that this is not striking. And then similarly with the opioid crisis, which we know is a major epidemic, and especially among young people. And again, it's hitting all of us. It's not just one part of the population. And one of the things about depression, so onset of major depression does often happen in young people. So the age here is 13 to 15 is the the highest rate. And the thing that's scary about early onset of depression and adolescence is, as we know, that's a time when the brain is very plastic. It's pruning and then also myelinating, so it's increasing. It's basically laying down frameworks that are going to be a big part of the brain structure going forward. So we do know that our brains are always plastic and we can keep improving them, but this is actually a particularly important time of brain development in adolescence. And so people that have major depression in adolescence are way more vulnerable and susceptible to depression for the rest of their lives. And then also the connection between stress and depression and anxiety. And so as our teenagers and our young people get more and more stressed, higher and higher incidences of anxiety and stress, and then that is getting laid down in the neural systems in the brain. So the other thing that's starting to come out a lot is the research around the connection between self-compassion and well-being, and reduction in depression, anxiety, and life improvement. So this is Christine Neff. If you go to her website, I think it's called selfcompassion.net or something like that. She has she keeps a running tally of the research on self-compassion and its benefits. So these are just two things that I found on there. This is one of the movement classes on the retreat. And so it is really, we found similar results of research on teen retreats. So 3 years ago, 2013, we did a study of 132 teens, pre, post, and 3 months post-retreat. So actually it was Dr. Brian Gala, who is at the University of Pittsburgh, who did the research. And so he did a whole battery of reports. It was all self-report questionnaires, looking at psychological resilience, mental health, personality. This was a breakdown of the participants. So you can see percentage of women, average age. What to me was, and what actually he pointed out to me was the 35% of our participants at that time were non-white, which he thought was actually very high from the research he was seeing on mindfulness. And I think that might even be increased today. And there's a lot of reasons we do a lot of effort to be a very welcoming and diverse community. Our teaching teams are extremely diverse. They might be the most diverse teaching teams, I think, in the mindfulness world. And we do a lot of training and work as an organization, requirement for our staff around power, privilege, oppression, diversity, to make the retreats a place that's welcoming, that we have some awareness around identities that the youth might be bringing with them, so that we can make it culturally appropriate for them. So these are some of the results. You can see non-reactivity, mindful attention, self-compassion. The blue is before retreat. The red is right after the retreat at the finish. Green is 3 months after retreat, which was amazing. I was totally shocked to see that these kept going up 3 months post-retreat. And the little stars mean statistical significance, which I'm not a statistician, so yes, that means something, it's good. These are to perceived stress, rumination, depression. And so you start to see here depression, and then this next series, negative mood, positive mood, life satisfaction. They had meaningful improvements right at the end of the retreat, and then so bounce back towards baseline. So none of them went back fully to baseline. But Brian Gala, Dr. Gala, he hypothesized that these ones, the non-reactivity, mindful attention, self-compassion, rumination, are more kind of skills, like that you learn and then you can continue to improve on, whereas the depression and the mood one are more mood, so they're more changeable based on conditions. So he was proposing maybe that's why they sort of bounced back, but the other ones kept going. So the skills increased over time, but the mood depends on the conditions on that day. And then the big thing for us, so he's asking here days of mindfulness meditation and days of loving-kindness meditation in those 3 months after the retreat, and their correlation with the variables that he was studying. And so one of the biggest things that he pointed out for me, and again, these 2 stars mean like really, really strong correlation, was that the relationship, there's a much stronger correlation between doing loving kindness practice and improvements in self-compassion with all of the other benefits. So with lower depression, with improved life satisfaction, and that was much more correlated than mindfulness, than their increase in mindfulness. And so there are some questions about the mindfulness self-report score. You know, it has its own questions in terms of the measurement, but nonetheless, he saw clearly, what he saw was that the compassion piece seemed to be having the biggest impact on the benefits. And so we did another study this past summer that included parent reports and behavioral. It was all online, so it was like working memory stuff, and so that's getting peer reviewed right now. And so reading that was like, I mean, it was interesting for him to say that, but it was sort of like, yeah, that's sort of what we've known for a long time. So this is at the end, the teens fill out a evaluation, and this is what one of the teens wrote: "I learned how to love myself," and that's really common. That's like this kind of feedback of like I felt accepted, I felt like I belonged, I felt like I could be safe in my own mind. These kinds of feedback, that's really the transformation that we see in young people and what they reflect back to us about the power of the program. So, this is a little clip with RuPaul. Do you guys know RuPaul?
You gotta love yourself. How in the hell are you gonna love somebody else? Can I get an amen up in here? Amen. All right, now let the music play.
Great. So, and it turns out RuPaul is a big meditator. He's been a long-term meditator. Yeah. So actually, he's on the 10% Happier podcast. He's one of the first. It's such an awesome interview with him. I highly recommend it if you listen to the 10% podcast. And he talks about his meditation practice and what its role has been in his life. Okay, so we're going to shift, and this will be kind of a chunk of what we'll talk about. So then we'll talk about how does this translate into addressing these issues of systemic injustice that are really coming to the forefront of our minds today. And you all might have heard the news today with Philando Castro, the police officer's trial, that he was acquitted. And there's so many things in that, there's so many ways that we might want justice to be served, and not necessarily have it be an adversarial process. I mean, what we really want is for police to not be responding out of implicit bias when they're in these situations, and so many other things. That's what we want, or I do. So how do we make that a reality? And I do see mindfulness as one of the foundational tools around this. There's more and more research happening, and if people are interested, I can send you an article from the Mind and Life Institute that goes over some of the research around implicit bias and racism and the role of meditation, contemplative practices in addressing that. And so one just very simple practice that they did is they would show an image of a person of color to, I think it was mostly white people in the study, and then people would take the Harvard implicit bias test, which is another. I really highly recommend checking that out and doing that practice just to see your own biases, and it has it for all different categories of kind of what we call target or marginalized groups. And so it was a simple practice of doing loving kindness for someone of a different race, and it shifted people's implicit bias score pretty significantly. So just to say that that's one of the practices. And that also, other research that I've seen is when people are in groups, diverse groups, that are telling their stories, communicating in an authentic and intimate way, there's a significant reduction in bias across group, in-group, out-group bias. So it's that idea, and it makes sense, right? If you can connect with the humanity of someone else, we start to see them as a whole person. You know, we stop having these like flat images and projections onto whole categories of people. So again, these skills of the compassion practice, the relational mindfulness skills of learning how to attune and connect can be powerful at this level. So this is a picture of one of the activities we do. It's called the shoe game, where you take your shoes off. And basically, it's a whole kind of thing, but you basically tell the story of your shoes and then something about yourself. Like, these are the shoes of a person who struggles to feel loved, you know, or whatever. It's so fun. We usually do it the first night of retreat. And this is where I see that teens want to go here. I mean, the first night of retreat, they'll just be like dropping stuff in there that you're like, all right, that's what's happening. This is what we're doing. And so you put your shoes in the middle, and then anyone who kind of resonated with it at the end, anyone popcorn style goes in and picks up the shoes and brings them back to you and mirrors back what you said. These are the shoes of a person who. And so it's this experience of being seen and heard and resonated with. It's pretty infallibly a powerful experience. We do other kinds of relational practices. We do things called lightning rounds. We do a practice called hot seat, which is basically a group meditation. And one of the teens will volunteer to be on the hot seat, so this is in the small group. And there's a lot of process here. We've created the safe container of the whole retreat with the agreements. Then we create an even safer container of confidentiality and safety within the small group. And then we might get to hot seats at some point. And a hot seat is someone who volunteers to be on the hot seat, and then everyone's attention is on that person. It's basically like they kind of become like the breath. They become the object of meditation. So we put our attention, our kind, curious awareness onto that person. We notice it strays, we come back. So our eyes even, our minds, we keep coming back. In many ways, that's the heat of it, having people like be that attentive with you. And then people can ask questions. So you raise your hand, it's facilitated. You raise your hand, you get called on, you ask a question, any question. Sometimes the teens can say if they want what level of hotness they want it, but I've never heard a teen not say like super mega hot. So, so I don't always do that because at this point I'm like, they're just gonna say like ghost pepper hot. But they can, and also they choose to be on the hot seat. So there's already this like wanting to kind of be seen. And then people can ask them questions, and they answer however they want. When your question's been answered, you say thank you, and then it's over. It's not a back and forth. So you have to raise your hand again if you want to ask a question, or anyone else says, and you can ask a question. And the idea is we're just following our natural curiosity, not trying to make anything particular happen. It's not an agenda. It's not therapy. It's just like, where's the curiosity about this person and what they're sharing in their life? And then paying attention. And so then we finish with a round of appreciation. The one thing that the person said or that you see about them or that you resonated with what they said. And it's often one of the most transformative experiences on the retreat. And for a person. We do these on some of our adult retreats, and it's just unbelievably powerful to have that kind of kind, curious, loving attention on you and be met with like openness and curiosity and appreciation is like a very powerful experience. And the thing about that for teens is also, it's also kind of normal. If you're listening to other people, it's like normalizing your experience, right? So one of the biggest challenges is them thinking like, I'm the only person that feels this, or, you know, the isolation. And so getting a sense of like, oh no, this is what it's like to be alive. Everyone is suffering, everyone's struggling. And then they get to have practice empathy and compassion for their peers and also receiving it. So we talked a little bit about this. This is an image of where people feel emotions in their bodies. Okay. And so this is a big area of interest for me, and I think it's so relevant to some of these big issues. So first of all, the empathetic connection is attuning and being willing to feel with someone. And to be able to do that, we need to be okay with being uncomfortable, right? So this is one of the biggest skills that we can teach young people is how to be uncomfortable. and how to develop equanimity, courage, capacity to be with more and more discomfort. Because in a way, that's life. You know, if we can't, it's like that's how we end up opening to all of life, is because we're willing to be with it. And many times, just think about it when you're talking to someone, when we can't be comfortable with what they're expressing or with the emotion in ourselves, that's when we go right to like advice giving, fixing, wanting to change the situation. But very often what people want is just to be felt and seen and heard and kind of resonated with. So but to be able to do that, we have to be able to sit in our own discomfort. That's the first part of it. And then there is the aspect of shifting to compassion. So with empathy, we can fall into empathetic distress, burnout, all of these things. And so this was another piece of Tanya's research that was so interesting to me, that they did brain scans for empathy and compassion actually lights up our reward centers. So she did the research first on Mathieu Ricard, who's like the happiest person in the world, according to the research. But so she had him get in the brain scanner and do compassion, and she had only ever worked, she didn't even have the distinction yet between empathy and compassion. And so he gets in there, and everyone's brain had lit up the like pain receptors when they looked at a painful image. His lit up all these positive reward centers. So she was like, "What? I don't think you're doing what I was asking you to do. I'm asking you to do empathy." And so he came out, and they figured out that what he was doing was actually this connecting into his wish for the suffering to be alleviated, for that person to be well, connecting into his wish for them to be happy and free from this suffering. And that actually ultimately is a kind of pleasant experience, right? And if we practice it, we do start to see that. So for me, what was so interesting about this is, and so then she's like, okay, I get what you're doing, but go back in there and do actual empathy. And so he did it, and all the pain receptors lit up. And she's like, okay, great, now I get what's happening. And you can come out now. And he's like, no, please, I can't come out. I need to do compassion. This is way too painful. I'm like burning out. I need to shift over to compassion. So that sense of like, even he couldn't hold that much pain. And so it's just been for me thinking about my own practice, like how can I do that more? And I think the thing here is like, we don't want to go into like kind of a spiritual bypass of just jumping right to the compassion because that feels good. I do think there's this role of empathy and empathetic attunement that's important, but that we can, at some point we do want to shift over to the compassion and connect with a sense of wanting someone to be well, to be free from suffering. So this might be something you can work with in your own practice, but I found for me that that's going to be an important kind of revelation and practice going forward. And particularly around these issues of systemic injustice. So I've been doing a personal practice. I heard this from a Buddhist teacher one time, that she watches painful documentaries and tries to stay present for them. So the one she described, she watched the Emmett Till documentary, which so it shows the images of Emmett Till and his beaten body and face, and because of the open casket. And so she's trying to just stay in, there's such a tendency, like we want to numb out, we want to avoid, we want to come away from this, right? But can we stay open-hearted and connected in the face of this pain? So I've been doing that, like watching the movie 13th. People watch that on Netflix, which I had to watch it in 4 segments because I would just be breaking down. It's a movie about the prison system in the U.S. and the racial injustice of the prison system. It's on Netflix, 13th. I highly, highly, highly recommend watching that. And then also read the book by Brian Stevenson called Just Mercy, which is another very important and extremely painful book. And so it was a practice, but again, can I stay? Can I stay connected? Can I feel? Can I breathe? But I think I'm also learning, okay, and when do I shift to compassion practice as a way not to kind of burn out? But being able to do that is bringing so much more awareness to me about what's actually happening in our country and the reality of systemic racism and injustice, which then leads me to like this deep commitment of like, what's my role in this? What do I need to do about this? And so the thing with that, the action, it's like I don't have some kind of pat solution, you know? I really feel like it's a practice of us sitting in the connection and the compassion, staying with it, not trying to fix, solve, strategize, and then see what arises. Like, what is the right action that comes out of that present moment, compassionate, connected awareness? And it'll be different in each situation. Maybe I'll just say like one small example of that. While we're on teen retreat, late into the retreat, there's this one young man who's been on like 10 retreats. He's probably been on the most retreats of any teen ever. Comes from a pretty rough background and has identities that are definitely marginalized in our country. And he's totally being disruptive in the hall, in the meditation hall, which is so annoying. Because he's disrupting his friends next to him and getting them to be like not actually meditating and talking and fooling around and disturbing them. And also so annoying because it's like, you've been here 10 times. Like, you come to retreat all the time. Like, why are you doing this? And I had like a little talk with him on the side about it, and he still was doing it. So it was late last night of the sit, so I just walked in. And, you know, there is some part of the mind or body that's like, I'm so annoyed at you. You know, God, you're so annoying. Like, or whatever, just like a reactivity. But coming back in, connecting with like actually this unconditional positive regard for the young people that we work with. And so, and then going towards, you know, this also is the tendency to, instead of going away, getting closer. So I just went up and I squished in between him and his friends in some chairs. And then I was like, oh, Tim, why don't you lead the meditation tonight? So I'll sit here and then you go lead it. And so he did. He was totally psyched. Went up to the front of the hall, completely still for 30 minutes. Totally still, perfect mindfulness, rang the bell at the end. It was like, and even I was just sitting there, like, and then I'm between his two friends, and they're totally still because I'm sitting right next to them. It was amazing. And it wasn't like a thought out thing. It was just like, it wasn't like, oh, this is a brilliant move. Someone else was like, oh, that's a nice move. And I was like, I have no idea what that, you know, it just arose out of like meeting the situation with some openness. It's a picture of some of our young people. So I'm just, this will be, I knew this was going to happen, so I'm just going to touch on climate change. And to me, this is like the ultimate challenge that we're facing as a globe. So this is a recent story that was in the New York Times about the ice shelf and how fast it's melting, and much faster than earlier predicted. So much of the science is showing, you know, there's all these graphs about temperature change, about sea level rise, and we are on the top of those graphs. We're not in the bottom. It's happening at like the top expected speed in many of these areas of signs of climate change. And it's speeding up. This is an image from NASA about the prediction of the climate in the U.S. So it's July 1950 is the top image. July 2100 is the bottom image. And the red, 40 degrees is 40 degrees Celsius is 104 degrees Fahrenheit.
Is that average temperature for the year?
No, this is July, average July temperature. Yeah. So, but still, we're looking at, I mean, we saw this in Boston. We had 2 major heat waves before July 15th, which had never happened before in Boston. And this is just all over the place. There's these once-in-a-lifetime weather events happening. So it's, you know, it's real. It's totally real. And many times, I mean, there's a lot to the behavioral science of climate change, but one of them is, I think that we can't handle it. It's too much. It's too much to handle. Like, it's like so painful. It must not be happening. It can't be real. It's going to be okay. Someone else is going to fix it. You know, denial, repression, suppression. I'm just going to like well, gas is cheap, so I'm still going to buy my big car, whatever, you know? And so developing the capacity to be with the pain and discomfort of this is going to be step one. And then shifting into compassion is step two, and particularly compassion for the earth, you know, the natural world around us. And I was so happy. These flowers are amazing, right? They're so amazing. You can take a moment before you leave, just like, we could do a meditation, we don't have time, but I was going to do a meditation just like on the flowers, right? It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what this planet is, yeah.
Do you ever do any of Joanna Macy's work with the young people?
Yeah, and actually next week Joanna Macy is going to be on the NorCal Teen Retreat. Isn't that amazing? For 2 days. And so she's going to be doing some workshops with them, and I'm like devastated that I'm not there. But it's going to be awesome for them, yeah. So that's, yeah, I'm so excited to hear how that goes for everyone. Yeah, and then we do some of her workshops with the kids. Yeah, so Joanna Macy is an amazing Buddhist practitioner and teacher, and also environmental activist. She's now in her like late 80s and is just a force of amazing goodness in the world. So if you have any opportunity to hear her speak or see her work, I highly also recommend her. And she's slowing down at 88 or something like that. So if you have the chance, now's the moment. So we'll say that, the earth practice. There's a practice I do that's about connecting with the earth and feeling its love and support, which we don't have time for.
There's just, I think Joanna Macy's coming to Row, Campus Conference Center in the fall, I think.
Oh, wow. Wow, so Row, so maybe you could Google Joanna Macy Row Center. That's great. Thank you. Ted is done. You've done work with her. Right? Yeah. To Row. So maybe the last thing I want to say too about climate change and a lot of these issues, so last week I was at the Mind and Life Summer Research Institute. That's why I kind of got all up on this research. And one of the researchers was showing the impact of relationship on our experience of pain and all sorts of difficulties. So he does research where he puts people on a brain scanner and then zaps them, electrocutes them. It's great. And so what he does is like first they're either alone, holding the hand of a stranger, or holding the hand of a loved one, and then he sees the reaction, and it's in their brain. But also he tells them when they're going to get zapped, but like, you know, you're going to get zapped in 20 seconds. So it's also the anticipation of pain, and it's way reduced when they're holding the hand of a loved one. It's not reduced from the stranger though, which is interesting. And then another study they do is like looking up a hill. Like humans tend to overestimate hill steepness, and so but if you're next to your friend, a loved one, people consistently estimate that the hill is less high. And similarly with a backpack, they put like a heavy backpack on them, and if you have a loved one next to you, consistently estimate that the backpack is less heavy than when you're alone. So cool, right? So this is the other way that we do this, is like if we're doing this together, we're holding it, and it actually is less painful, difficult, daunting when we're together with loved ones, right? So how do we make more people our loved ones? And then do it together, right? I think that's basically our only option. And in one way, it's sort of like the ultimate. It's like the earth was like, sweet, all right, you guys need to figure out how to collaborate and love and live effectively. Fine, here you go, climate change. You will either all die or you will figure this out. So hopefully we'll figure it out. Yeah. And grow, so again, this is just those seeds growing up quite strong. And I'll finish with this. This is one of our teens. I think you just started something that's going to change our generation. Very sweet. So, thank you for your kind attention.